City of Kingman Municipal Utilities Commission meeting on Thursday, June 22nd, 2023. If we could have roll call, please.
Chair Van Oosting,
Present.
Vice Chair Dimmitt,
Present.
Commissioner Boffman,
Present.
Commissioner Wigren,
Present.
and Commissioner Custer and Commissioner Retberg are excused. Sorry, we have a quorum.
Thank you. If we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, approval of last meeting minutes. Has everyone had a chance to review those minutes? Do we have a motion to accept those minutes?
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes from last meeting.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Not opposed. Motion carries. Minutes are approved. Consideration of public comments. Do we have anyone in the public who'd wish to address us?
No, we do not have any comments.
Thank you. New business. Review the recommendation for exception to the requirement to connect to sewer, engineering 23-0068. Staff has received a request for a sewer variance from Donald Ammerman for a parcel located on Butler Avenue east of Jimmy Drive. The applicant plans on obtaining a building permit to install a single-family residence on the property.
All right, good afternoon, we'll call it. This is a request for a variance to connect to the sewer system. As was mentioned, this is near the intersection of Butler Avenue and Jimmy Drive. The property in question is highlighted in yellow there on Butler. The closest sewer is here on the left on Jimmy Drive. It's about 330 feet away from the existing sewer. The sewer in Jimmy Drive is a 24-inch trunk line that was installed a couple years ago by the city. And typically, in these scenarios, if someone is within 500 feet of a sewer main, in order for them to receive a water meter from us, they need to be in compliance with utility regulations, which in this case would require them to extend sewer to the property. The existing 24-inch sewer in Jimmy Drive is currently dry. There's no flow in it. And so when we look at variances and the variance requests, there's a few things that we look for. We look to see if this is a unique situation that would warrant a variance, like if there's something odd about it, or if it would create more maintenance or something like that. Another thing that we look at is to make sure that when we grant a variance, we're not setting a precedent that would nullify the code. And then the last thing we look at is to make sure that the request is in line with our overall goals for the system. And typically, when we're looking at those goals, we take into account the environment. Septic systems do provide a measure of treatment, but we treat it to a higher standard, and we actually use it for injection into the aquifer. So part of our goal when we're looking at these is to try to get as many people connected to the sewer as possible. And then another big thing that we've looked at over the past is, again, we want to try to expand our customer base as much as possible. It's not so much for the revenue, it's to spread the expense of the system across a larger customer base. And so usually we are always recommending that we follow those goals and vision and get as many people connected to the sewer system as possible. And I think that's why the regulations were written the way that they were. So having said all of that, in this case, since the sewer main is dry, and it's a 24-inch main that has a relatively low slope in the pipe, the closest active sewer main that this would tie into is almost 4,000 feet away. And so to add one connection to the line, we foresee a potential maintenance problem for us over the long term until we get more connections on the system. And so when we looked at it, we realized that for us, that's the biggest unique situation that we're seeing. And so in this case, we're recommending approval of the variance. And so with that, I think I can answer any questions you might have. I believe the applicant is here too, if you have any questions for him.
In general, does granting these variances pose a risk to your delegated authority through the Department of Environmental Quality?
I'm going to say no.
Okay.
It doesn't.
Okay. It mentions here that you've got a requirement or recommending a requirement for dual plumbing. What would that look like here?
So I guess I do want to make that point is we're recommending approval with the condition that the new building be plumbed so that it can connect in the future. Usually that would involve doing some sort of stub out in the front so that if there is a connection, they can just tie in the front and go straight out to the street. So we're not asking for dual plumbing. I think it would just be a stub to where you could kill the connection to the septic tank and then it would go in another direction. And we're not going to dictate per se what that looks like. It's going to be whatever works best for them and their site design, but we're just wanting to make sure that there's an opportunity to connect in the future if that becomes available.
So I got a question on that. In the future, if the septic fails and there's a sewer out there that's usable now, at that point, that customer would have to tie on to that sewer, correct?
Yeah, so the regulations offer a little bit more relief when it comes to a failed septic system. So instead of 500 feet, it would be if they're within 250 feet of the sewer main, then we would want them to connect. And so it really just would depend. In this case, they're more than 250 feet away, so it would just depend if sewer was extended into Butler at the time.
So I guess I'm wondering, is it a requirement that they set their system up that they can tie in the future? Because if their septic fails in the future, it's going to be a requirement anyways that they tie into the sewer. So whether they do it now or whether they do it in the future, I guess I'm having a hard time understanding what the purpose is for future plumbing.
So all we're asking for is that when they're setting up their on-site plumbing, they don't do it in such a way to where it would make a connection prohibitive. Right.
That they have a clear understanding that they will have to tie onto the sewer in the future if their septic were to fail and there was a sewer available to tie onto.
Right, and that's what this, I mean, that's why we have the condition. And so it'll be in the record and say, you know, we want them to set it up to where it can be connected to in the future, and then whatever the requirements are at the time, they would be required to connect.
Okay.
So it's not indicating that, say, in a year's time, they put in septic today, in a year's time, sewer's available, they have to discontinue use of their septic. It just means that
it would only
according to
be
the other
if
code.
there's a failure. Like
Okay, perfect.
if they have to go and get a permit to do something to fix, rehab, or something with that septic system that requires a permit, then they would be required to connect.
Are there any other questions?
This doesn't look like it's in the city limits, is it?
It's in the county.
It's in the county? Okay, so that the county would issue them the septic permit then?
The county issues all the septic permits,
Okay.
whether it's in the city limits or not.
Okay.
And just so I understand, the 24-inch public sewer that's 330 feet from the property, it's not being utilized because the other properties located nearby are all septic additionally?
Correct.
Okay.
So the city, through a capital improvement project, built this trunk line and actually extended it across Highway 66 and under the railroad tracks so that development east of the tracks could be facilitated with sewer. So this was a kind of a long, big picture project for the city. It's definitely overkill for this particular area, but we're looking at the overall area that's going to be served, and so.
Are there any more questions for staff? Would the applicant like to address the commission?
I really don't have anything to say. That's,
If you do come up and speak into the thing so they can get it on record.
I don't have anything.
Great, thank you. Are there any further comments or discussion? Would anyone like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion that we approve the variance with the condition that it be plumbed for future sewer hookup.
Second.
We have a motion and we have a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries. Variance is approved. Item number 4, announcements by commission members, limited to announcements, availability, or attendance at conferences and seminars, requests for agenda items for future meetings, and requests for reports from staff. Do we have anyone who would like to add or announce anything for the next meeting? Nope. All right, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.